So I want to talk basically about how Foundups differs from Y-Combinator, TechStars, Founders Institute, Unreasonable Institute, and all these other basically clones of one another, or you could say kind of clones of Y-Combinator, right? Because Y-Combinator really was one of the pioneers that led the. Now all of these, and I'm going to throw Kickstarter in this too. All of these are basically what I call closed entrepreneur development frameworks. Closed. Now there's a framework. They have a system. They've figured out what works for them. And ultimately, when you're looking at TechStars and Y-Combinator and other similar groups, most of their success comes down to one thing: their network of investors. That's it. That's their success. They also kind of throw the entrepreneur into kind of a boot camp-like experience, where it's a sink or swim, and they put them through this intensive I can't say experience on being an entrepreneur, and from their success rate, it works somehow. However, the operative word is a close. Now, what differs from Foundup is that what I envision is a completely open framework. Now, an open framework, how does an open and closed framework differ is anyone as an investor can participate. So you're not limited, like right now, there's probably lots of people who'd like to be investors of Y-Combinator, TechStars, and so on. However, they can't. They have no need for their little bit of money or whatever. They want a certain threshold of investment and so on. Number two is, as an entrepreneur, basically it's up to me to somehow convince the gatekeeper to let me in. And location is everything. If I'm in Pakistan, or if I'm in India, if I'm in China, or maybe I just don't have the reach, or I don't have the communication skills, or whatever. For me to get accepted into the program is practically impossible. Now understand, I've applied. Here's a guy who, as I've mentioned before, I'm very well connected. I have a track record of achieving, of getting my startups built into prototypes, into assembling teams. I'm a business development director for an Inc. 500 fastest growing company. I have access to build any team I want. I can do it. I have access to a database that most CEOs, VPs, and so on would die to have access to. So, and not only that, I have a reach. However, even someone like myself can't get by the gatekeepers, and there could be a lot of things. A lot of it is demand. I'm competing. Another of it may be age. Maybe they consider now 40 is too old. They're looking for someone in their 20s. I'm over the hill. So as a 40-year-old entrepreneur, they don't want to mix me in with the 20-year-olds, for obvious reasons. So a closed system basically inhibits participation in a number of different ways. Now, an open system, there are none of those limitations. Any investor can participate. Any entrepreneur can participate. And ultimately, for this open system to work, you need a couple things. One is you have to have an open education system, which I envision. It's called the Foundups Lab and also the Foundups Scrum. So Foundups Lab is basically a workshop that takes place in colleges and high schools. It's between a 12 to 18 week, depending if it's a high school or college. It is basically managed by practitioners. Now, practitioner is an important term because it's not a teacher. A teacher is not a practitioner. A practitioner is someone who is in the act of doing it. So I'm a practitioner, right? Anyone involved in a startup, actually doing a startup, who has a history and experience of doing a startup is a practitioner. Someone who conceives ideas and researches theories and philosophies, but is not actively involved, is a teacher. It's two very distinct. One's a doer, one's basically, you know, can't do, so they teach, so to speak. So these practitioners will come from Foundups Scrum. Foundupscrum.com is a meetup group for entrepreneurs who are doing it and to help one another succeed at their startups. It's that simple, right? So the education is there. Location, you know, part of Foundups is the Open Incubator. It's a trademark. We're the only Open Incubator. We have our first Open Incubator in Washington, D.C. as a pilot, and we're looking to open incubators all over the world. Open incubators are basically places for entrepreneurs at no cost to them to meet and work on their startups. There's only a certain number of open incubators within a region, and ultimately each open incubator is run by the groups of individuals in there. They set basically the requirements and so on. There may be somewhat, I'll say there could be a bit of a gatekeeper in there, but for obvious reasons. If you're working on a startup and you have a similar idea, obviously two startups doing the same thing in the same location isn't necessarily the best thing. So obviously you'd have to go to a different open incubator. But however, application acceptance is not by one person, it's by the group. It's not by some funders, it's by the group. The entrepreneurs will decide who has access to them. And thirdly, the most important part is the framework, or I call the platform. Now the platform, I'm not going to talk much about, but basically all I will say is this. The platform, Foundups.com, is something I've worked on for over a year, encompasses over 16 years of personal experience, and it basically addresses a lot of the problems that are out there. And it addresses them in a very unique and fun way. Predominantly addresses, the primary thing addresses crowdfunding. And, using a very interesting methodology, which is very different than the Kiva clones, I like to call them. The Kiva clones mean Kickstarter, and all the other, like, even I would say, Unreasonable Institute is kind of a Kiva clone. You put money in, you get no money out, you get no return for helping this guy, go to their event. So, ultimately, the platform will provide a crowdfunding, crowdsourcing, and team building components created in a very interesting way. Like I said, again, I want to patent this. I'm not going to talk about it. This is basically the golden egg, and it will drive everything. And again, I've talked about why I'm not going to talk about it. Whoa, there's another car in the snow over there. People just can't drive slow, can they? Anyway, so what I'm describing currently does not exist. And ultimately, there are parts, and you could say Grow VC is a part, you could say LinkedIn is a part, you can say, Match.com is a part, right? They're dating. However, when you put all these things together in an interesting and new way, what you have is a proprietary framework for doing startups. When you add the education and you add the meetup groups and so on, what you have is a really fun way to get your startup going. And, that is how an open framework for entrepreneur development is significantly different than that of a closed one that you see. Thank you.